Okay. Is this thing on?
It's on.
You can hear me? Okay. Hi, guys. Welcome. This is my first podcast, and you know, we're going to talk about stuff. Perfectly Twisted. Please subscribe at YouTube, everywhere you listen to podcasts, across social media. You can find it all under Perfectly Twisted. And join with me is my friend Dave. And Dave he's a veteran at this stuff. He's like, he has a show. He's got millions of followers. So this is like old hat for him. You want to, it's the Dave show.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. So here's what's so fun for me, Nicole, is I'm so excited. Number one, you're doing this, and I think it's very brave of you to do this because a lot of people say, "Man, it's weird to sit down in front of a microphone." I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do this with you, but it's extremely exciting for me. Obviously, I'll tell the story, but I've been a fan of yours since you were a kid. I hate to say it, but I was a kid too, so I don't want to come off at that I was a freak. So. I'm excited to be here. I have some broadcasting experience for 30 years of doing TV and radio, and then podcasting since 2017. And I believe this is the way to go. And I'm sure your kids will tell you, like my kids have told me, nobody listens to the radio anymore. A lot of people, our kids' age don't even have televisions anymore. And everyone's streaming and they're watching on their phones or, iPads, whichever else. But podcasting is the way to go because young people don't want to be bothered on, you tell me when to watch. For me as a kid, if I wasn't at home to watch Happy Days at 8 o'clock at night, I missed it, on a Tuesday, and I had to wait for reruns. And now, DVRs and everything else. But for our kids and for people who have figured out podcasting understand I get a chance to listen and watch when I want to do it. So the fact that you're willing to do this is awesome. And I think your fans are going to love it. I think people want to hear what's going on with Nicole. And for me, just, first of all, being a fan first, I'm on cloud nine sitting here today. I'm so excited to be with you. And again, very proud of you and think what you're doing is extremely brave. But I will explain right off the bat in the first show.
We got to tell the people. Dave and I go way back.
way back. More important to me than to Nicole, but we do. We go way back. And
we do.
At my point, it's kind of embarrassing. But I'll tell you, the very first time I ever saw you, you were on Who's the Boss, and you and I are about the same age, and you're on Who's the Boss, and I remember going, oh my God, who's that girl? In my head going, that's the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. And she's my age. No one in my school looks like her. And I never thought one day I would meet you. Well, a couple years later, and I think I was living in Nashville, Tennessee at the time, moved to Los Angeles for high school, and you're doing Charles in Charge. And one day a buddy of mine, were walking through the mall, and they're giving away tickets to see shows. And I didn't even know it worked like this in Los Angeles. And for people outside of LA, they're probably shocked that the shows like you are on, when they have a live studio audience, those shows are free. You don't have to pay anything. And so even today, if you want to go see, a Jimmy Kimmel, all those shows are free shows. And
they used to be fun back in the day, because back in the day, we wouldn't keep stopping and starting. I don't know if you've gone to a taping of anything lately, but I mean, you could be there 4 hours. Like they stop.
It's funny you say that. Yeah,
totally different now. Back then, it was like a live show. In our first, we would do we would shoot 2 shows. The first one, even if there was a mistake, we didn't stop. We ran through it. The second show, the later show, then we would kind of back up, and then we would wait till the audience left and do pickups and redos. But there really wasn't very much. It really kind of was like you got one shot at it, and that was it. And now it's not like that anymore. All the fun's taken out of that. Going to
so let me ask you, Nicole, did you ever see one of these shows before you became like a main star actor?
No, but I had done plays. Like I did a play at the Mark Taper Forum, which is a big venue. A Jules Feiffer play. So I was familiar with being in front of an audience, and I love the audience. The energy, and you just it's exhilarating. It's really fun.
Instant feedback, right?
Yeah, you feed off each other. When the audience is loving it, you're loving it, you have more fun. If your jokes are hitting or not. So it's sort of a win-win for everybody. But okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt you. I didn't know if you'd been to one lately, and they're
No,
kind of
I haven't.
painful.
I haven't been. I used to go to a bunch of them though in the late '80s because, to be honest with you, I already knew what I was going to do. I already knew what college I was going to. I already got into school, and it was like I'm just finishing up high school to play sports, and then I was going to go to college. But I had time at night to go to shows, and I was, I'm going to see like Perfect Strangers and Married with Children and Charles in Charge, and my friends would say, "What the hell are you doing?" So I'm bored. It was like going to a free play, kind of like what you said. Well, when you're on Charles in Charge, and I believe you're on Channel 5 in LA.
Yeah.
And and so I'm like, oh my gosh, this show films on Thursday nights or tapes on Thursday nights. I can go straight from school straight to Burbank, and I'm gonna go. Well, I used to drag a different friend with me every night, every time,
I
because they would
can't
go,
believe
geez,
you
man,
even
we aren't going
remember
back to
what
Charles in
day.
Charge.
I can't believe you even remember what day
Oh
it
my
was.
gosh. Oh, I hate to say it, I do. And it's embarrassing as hell. So I'm only going to tell the story one time on the show because it is an embarrassing moment. I get teased about it
I'm
all the time.
sorry.
For almost 34 years, I've been teased by people. People in my high school would tease me, and everyone knew my goal was to one day ask you out. And I was a shy kid. I mean, really shy. Like with the phone ring in my house, I wouldn't even answer the phone. I was so shy. The fact that I even attempted to reach out to you was a huge step for me on my fears. And so you would do the show, and I'd watch the show, and the show was entertaining. I wasn't bored by the show at all. I was like, I enjoyed the show. And when it was over, I would try to get your attention, and you were great. Nicole was great even as a teenager. And so you would always come over and say hi. I'd always give you one rose, and I'd usually write you a note. And there are people that you lived in the area near the studios. I lived over the hill, and people would say, "Oh, I know her, and she's dating this guy, and she's dating that guy, and there's no chance." And I would say, "Man, I got to give it a shot. You never know." So I'd give you a note, and I'd always leave my phone number. And man, I would sit there. This is before cell phones, and I would sit there and I'd look at that phone. I would not leave the house. You know how many weekends I burned waiting for you to call? And I wouldn't leave the house. People want to play basketball, want to go to the beach, whatever. If she calls, I was living with my grandmother who was 85. My grandmother's going to be confused. It's not going to work out. She won't know how to take a message. So I would just sit there and just stare at that damn phone. And I did this a lot. I hate to say it. It's embarrassing, but I did this a lot. And this is what my radio audience always, laughs at me about. And then Jeff, who I do my radio show with, would say, dude, you were a stalker. And I go, I wasn't a stalker. And he goes, you were a stalker. And then next thing you know, Nicole, for 3 hours straight, the audience was calling the show telling me I was a stalker. And I was like, my intentions were always all good. What do you mean I'm a stalker? So it was embarrassing thinking back at that. But you were always extremely sweet, extremely nice. And then and you're the only person I've ever had a picture of a girl on my wall. I had a picture of
No.
you on my wall, and people would just go, "Oh my gosh, man, enough!" And so I'd go to school on Friday morning, and they'd go, "You go to Charles in Charge last night?" Everybody in the school knew what my game plan was. Yeah. Did she talk to you? Yeah. You think she's going to call you? And before I could even answer, I go, dude, she's never going to call. And everybody would always tell me, enough. You're embarrassing yourself. It's never going to happen. So we would go through this every week, and I hate to say it, Nicole. I think you film like 22 episodes a year. I probably had 20 of those shows, but here I am, 34 years later, and guess who called? Nicole and I have finally talked on the phone, and I can't tell you how crazy it is just to pinch myself now to go. I can't believe it. I made it. 34 years, but I made it.
Yeah, better late than never, right?
Better late than never. So you've been fantastic. Nicole came on the show. I do. It was a radio show. Now it's a podcast. Moved that to podcast too. And you were a fantastic guest, and everybody loved you in our audience and thought it was fantastic that you did it. And it's been a relationship that I'm very proud to have and say you are a friend. And before we did this, um, following your life and see where you've gone. And some things I know and some things I don't. People only know what Nicole Eggert's willing to share. And that's what I think about this show, that you've decided to do this, that you're going to kind of pull back the curtain, let people into the circle as far as what it's like growing up in Hollywood, what's it like now for you as a mom, and what your interests are. What is Nicole Eggert up to, and what is next for Nicole Eggert?
Okay, well, let me say you never gave off stalker vibes.
Thank you.
It wasn't stubborn. You were persistent.
I was.
It was very sweet. It was very sweet. And you know who was always your advocate was James Callahan, who played my grandfather.
That is
He was
awesome.
always like, he's such a nice boy. He's such a nice boy. Look at that kid. He shows up. He shows up. And I was incredibly shy. And I wasn't out like dating. I was working. I had to go back to school, and then I was at work before and after all the adults. Us kids had to do school, and there wasn't a lot of social life. So I know I hear a lot of people I dated like, oh, you dated this guy I
Yeah.
went to high school with. It's like, no, I didn't.
See,
No, I really didn't.
it's one of those things where obviously I was curious to know who she's dating because you were, I mean, I can't imagine what it was like. You're on the cover of magazines and people are associating you with people all the time. Did it drive you crazy as a kid to go, I'm not dating that person? Why do people assume I'm dating this person and that person when in reality you were working nonstop hours and then trying to get in whatever schoolwork you could?
Yeah, it was always a weird thing. I was always like, who's that guy that's telling people we're dating?
Yeah.
Girls, watch out for that guy. Be careful. Beware of that guy. But for me, and the truth is, I worked with a really creepy co-star. And he was always like not wanting me to go out and talk to you and take the rose. And then, you have James Callahan like encouraging, like, go be around somebody your age. And yeah, there was just really
Very
not a
nice.
lot of time. If I hung out with other kids, they were usually actors. And then I had my like Huntington Beach life where I would go on the weekends, and those were kids that I knew and went to school with, and those were like the homies that I'd known forever. So it was, two very different worlds, but not a whole lot of like time for dating. And I was, in one town 1 minute and then another town the next. So nothing would have worked anyway.
So, uh, le- okay, let's jump back to that time in your life because I think a lot of people want to know how do you get started? Like, at what age did you start? Who recommended this is something you could do? And at what point were you saying, this is what I want to do?
Okay. Well, I have the most ridiculous story. And my whole life hated this story. I hated that this is where I came from. But it's the truth. And I no longer hate it. I embrace it now that I understand it, now that I'm an adult. But my parents, they moved here. My mother was from England and my father was from Germany. And they grew up during World War II. They were older. And they met in Hollywood. And my mom got pregnant. Which is something I found out later in life. This is one of those things they hid from me that she was pregnant while they got married. It was like a big no-no. God. So she got pregnant, they got married, and he built a house in Huntington Beach when there was like nothing in Huntington Beach except this
Wow.
little, sleepy surf town. And my mom wanted, all these things for me. And there were local beauty pageants. And now you have to understand, I was the kid that was like making tree forts, and like trying to dig holes in the ground to make a swimming pool. I would dig holes in the ground and like line it with hefty bags
Yeah.
and try to make a swimming pool. And, that was me. I was out in the mud. And my mom put me in these beauty pageants. And it was like, God damn it. And they were always at hotels. And hotels, I'm a water. If you can't tell by now, I'm obsessed with water. I always want to be in the pool. And all these venues that they would have these beauty pageants, there were pools. And I was like, that's where I want to be, in the pool. My mom would be like, get out of the pool. You got to put a dress on, Anyways, I ended up winning. I don't know how. I don't know how this happened. I guess it was my destiny. And then you win and, it gets higher, it becomes like regional, then it becomes national. And I made it I won Miss Universe.
Wow.
I mean, and it's televised.
Oh,
And
wow.
and I'm 4 years old. 4 years old. So there's like, the women's division of Miss Universe,
Yeah.
and then there was the children's. So I was on, they brought me on, and the host like serenaded me, and I had this whole like 2 or 3 minutes on TV, and then the phone just started ringing, and that was it. And my mom always said to me, if you're not having fun anymore, let me know. But I'm not so sure she really, I'm not so sure she really meant it. She kind of
Yes.
was like, maybe it made her feel better. So we did. And, it was just something that landed in my lap. It wasn't anything I ever went after. And I had a blast. My first commercials were Johnson's and Johnson's baby shampoo.
Yeah.
What kid didn't love Johnson's and
Yeah.
Johnson's? Mattel picked me up all the time. I did Barbie commercials. I did like their underwater bath mermaid toys, you name it. I did all the Mattel commercials.
Did you get stuff? Did you get as a kid, all you care about is toys. Did you get stuff?
I know, not really.
Okay.
What's so funny is that there was this woman that was like the Barbie Wrangler on the set.
Yeah.
And she would groom these Barbies, and I mean meticulous. And she would put like a little pin in the back, and you could only hold it like this. You could only hold it like that. And she was super, super strict about it. And you were like scared to touch the Barbie. And one day we were shooting at the beach. It was like for Malibu Barbie, and it was late and it was cold. And I was like kind of shaking, and we were like putting Barbie into this little water thing. And I shook, and and the whole Barbie went underwater. It just came up this sandy, soppy mess, and I was like, I'm gonna die. She's gonna kill me. So no, they didn't really give out the toys, but they paid you.
Good.
I did a Copper Tone commercial that ran, I want to say like 15 years.
Wow.
And I kind of got rich off that commercial back in the day when you got paid, decent, and you got residuals. So that's kind of how it started. And then I got a gig for a movie of the week where I played Cheryl Ladd's daughter, Robert Urich in Cheryl Ladd's daughter. I was five years old, and it was about child abuse. Yeah, and it was a big role. And everything sort of snowballed. I had a great career as a kid. I worked with George Cukor. I worked with Michael Chapman. I worked with huge, A-list celebrities.
Yeah.
I had a really good base, and I really learned from some of the best at a really young age. So I was very fortunate, and the other stuff just sort of, rolled into my lap. And I was doing Who's the Boss. I had a reoccurring on Who's the Boss, and the executive producer, Al Burton of Charles in Charge, would always call me in for projects that he had. He was always testing me, always having me come, and it was always down to the wire. And I never really booked one of his shows. He did Facts of Life. He did all that. He did all the hit Different Strokes. He had all the big shows at the time. And I went with Alyssa Milano. She tried out for Circus of the Stars, and I wanted to be on that show so bad. I was
really.
Yeah, I was dying. I was like, I want to do that. And I convinced the guy. I go up to the guy and I'm like, can I try out? And he's like, well, I didn't have an appointment. Nobody booked me to be there, like tag along. And he's like, okay. And so I tried out, and they were like, oh, well, we want her. And you have to be on the show. You have to be a series regular. And I was like, how am I going to make this happen?
How old were you now? How old were you then?
12.
Okay. 12,
I guess. And 12, 13, somewhere right around there. And Al Burton had an audition for Charles in Charge. And I was like, this is it.
Yeah.
We got to do this. And he put me on the show, and I went straight back to Circus of the Stars. And I was like, I got a show. Can I be on? That's what I cared about. Like, if that tells you anything about me, I wasn't excited that I got a series. I was excited that I got to now go be on Circus of the Stars.
It's interesting that, Al Burton looked out for you. And I know who he is because obviously going to Charles in Charge, they would bring him out once in a while and he'd get an ovation from the crowd. And almost like he looked out for you or saw something in you, the way you always heard that Aaron Spelling looked out for Heather Locklear. He always found a job for Heather Locklear.
Yes. And, Aaron Spelling tried with me. Aaron Spelling was an advocate of mine too. Just nothing really ever hit. Nothing ever clicked. He always brought me in also. But Al definitely was one of my biggest fans. He put me on Baywatch. He's the reason I did Baywatch. He made a deal because Charles in Charge was one of the first shows to be on a network, be canceled, and then be brought back in syndication.
Yep.
So Baywatch had just been canceled, and they wanted to follow that formula. So they were working with Al Burton, and he said, look, let's do a spinoff, and we'll do a spinoff of like a high school show at the beach, and Nicole will be the lead. And they said, yeah, let's do it. So me and a lot of my crew, my hair, makeup, wardrobe, we all went to Baywatch. The spinoff never happened because the show shot up to be number one show in the world, and they
Yeah.
didn't want to mess with it. And that's kind of really why I left the show, because I didn't sign on to be the lifeguard. And I was very young, and I just thought leaving was the best idea. As an adult now, you realize you never leave the number one show
Yes.
in the world. Like, who does that? But
Yeah.
I did, and no regrets. It's everything's the way it's supposed to be. But yeah, that's kind of like the how I got involved and how I left.
So when you started having success, I mean, as a kid, I'm sure you aren't concerned about money or even know what you're getting paid. You're just it's something to do, and people are telling you how great you are. As a kid, it's great when someone says, "Hey, what you're doing is fantastic." So that's usually good enough. The pat in the back and the smiles, and you're getting attention. But when you realize at some point, hey, I am getting paid and I am making money, um, do you start thinking in your mind, I'm going to spend it on this, I'm going to do this, or do I have access to it? Or at what point does the money become, it's not just for fun? I know there's money in the bank account.
Not until a lot later. I lived a pretty privileged childhood. I got everything I asked for and everything I needed and ever wanted. My dad had a great job, and we lived a great life. But I'll tell you what, I was working on TJ Hooker, and the new Atari had just come out.
Yeah.
And it was on the Sony lot. So you could go to they would have like the store, and you could
Yeah.
buy all the late, whatever products they had. And that's when I said to my mom, hey, when is that paycheck coming? And I want that Atari. And she was like, let's go, let's get it. So, it wasn't a thing because I kind of just was a lucky kid to begin with. But as I became, older and I went shopping, there was like, I would just buy the whole store,
Yeah.
stupid shit like that, like didn't think about it. But my mom always kind of made sure I had money, but she limited it. So it was like, I was like I'm sure how a lot of housewives run is that I got like an allowance, so it's like, yeah, I had a card, but there was only a certain limit on it. And then, all my bills and everything were paid,
Automatically.
yeah.
Everything came out. And so you never had to worry about, I owe this, owe that. You
No,
never at like age 16, did you go out and buy like, a Ferrari, a Porsche,
I
anything that
didn't.
was extravagant?
I bought a house.
Okay. Smart.
I bought a
Smart.
house. I did. Because me and my father were always into real estate, and we just loved it. I still love it, and that's what I spent my first like big thing. So I bought a home. I bought a home in the Hollywood Hills. No, my first car was a Volkswagen. I bought a Volkswagen Cabriolet, all white.
Yeah.
I mean, the cheesiest, car, but it was so on trend at the time,
It was. It
blonde
was. I hate to
girl.
say it. That's what I was driving. If you and I ever went out, I was driving the same damn car, except it wasn't the convertible. And it was a hand-me-down. but I was driving the same car, Nicole. That's so funny that you say that. All right, so I got to ask you, childhood wise, because where I lived in West LA, and Gary Coleman was doing Different Strokes, and he was living in my neighborhood, and Gary Coleman was a huge star,
Yeah.
and I remember every time he wanted to do something fun with the kids in the neighborhood, his parents would come running out of the house and say, "You need to come in and learn your lines." Like it almost seemed like he didn't have a childhood. It wasn't allowed to hang out and be a normal kid in the afternoon or on the weekends.
Oh, oh, that's too bad.
So I mean, well, for you, were you able to basically not your friends, were they also actors or were they neighborhood kids?
I had both. I mean, during the week, I would hang out with Hollywood kids, and they always had like a lot of people will be familiar. They had these like it was called Alfie soda pop parties, and so it
Yeah.
was like kind of like a nightclub but for kids. So everybody would get together and blow off steam, and it was like a safe place for kids all in the industry to all just be together without
That's cool.
judgment.
That's
And
cool.
then on the weekends, I would go home to Huntington Beach, like I said, and then I would be with the kids that I went to elementary and junior high school with, because I never went to high school. High school, right when I was supposed to start high school, I started Charles in Charge. So I was set schooled.
So when you say
So
set schooled, for people who aren't aware how that works, because I've always kind of wondered how much school do you have to do? You know, for a high school kid, it's 8 in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. For you, how are you set schooled? How does it work?
it's a nightmare. No, you have to do your 5 hours every day.
Oh
So
wow.
you go in early before work starts, and you stay after, and you do schooling all throughout the day, and you have what they call like an understudy that does your part on set for you, and then you go in every so often, and they kind of let you know how it's the blocking, where you're standing, what lines have been changed, how it's all
Yeah.
worked out. So they do it for you, and then you have to catch up. So being a kid on set is hard, but that's it's no joke. It's a tough job. And yes, you have to do all the same schooling. You have to be registered in a school and
Oh
do their
wow.
curriculum and get graded by them. By the end of it, I was doing it like independent study, where because I couldn't take it. I could not take being locked in a room for 5 hours with two other kids in this. Some of the tutors, some of the teachers we had were great. And I remember one that just put me over the edge. I couldn't deal with him. He was he was so annoying. And I said, forget this. I can't do this anymore. So I would go into an actual school once a week and do a few hours there. And then I could do my schoolwork on my own time and turn it in. So that's sort of how I did my last year of high school.
So
So,
okay, hold on. When you walked into a regular school, what was the reaction? I mean, I'll
well,
tell you what, you walked into my high school, I wouldn't have heard a thing that the teacher said. I would just been staring at you. I mean, I would have freaked out going, wait a second, this is the girl we see on TV every week. What do you mean she's sitting in class with us?
okay. So it was at like, do you know what continuation is?
Yeah.
Like where they would send the bad kids and like the
Yeah.
pregnant girls.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where I went.
Yeah.
That's
I
where I went.
got you.
So it was on a campus of a regular school, but it was in a building with just not as many kids. And they were
Okay.
all very cool. They actually were, very kind. I remember they were very kind and welcoming to me, and like, you know, yeah. And I don't even know where I would drive, like way out deep in the valley, in the San Fernando Valley. I can't even remember what school it was, but it was much better than having to sit in a
Yeah.
room. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
It,
Here I
it,
got. I got so many questions for you, and I know we have, again, Nicole's going to do 52 shows in a year, so there's so many things you have time to answer. But I could spend so much time talking to you about different things. But I do have one more acting question for you.
okay.
Learning lines. So you went from basically being a model to a TV actor to being on television shows. For me, it seems like such a fear to say, I got to get my lines right. I mean, you just mentioned points that I think a lot of people don't understand. You have to know even where to stand. And everything is timed out to the second of how a show works to make sure you're hitting all your commercials. As a kid, how hard was it for you as a person? I guess how hard is it for you as an actor to learn lines? Is it come easy, or is it one where it takes a long time?
I think different projects are different, so it definitely varies. When you're like for me on Charles in Charge, who's the boss, those kinds of things, you're having so much fun. And if you do your homework as an actor and you put yourself in that situation and you're listening to what the other actor is saying instead of just focusing on your own dialogue, you know what your response is going to be. It all seems to make sense, right? At least for me, that's kind of how
Yeah.
I worked it, is that you put yourself in that scenario, and then you know what your response is going to be. It becomes much more natural, and you're reacting instead of acting. And I'm not giving an acting class here because I'm not qualified, but it becomes that way. But when you do something like, say, if you're going to be a scientist or a lawyer, and there's a lot of like mumbo jumbo jargon that is difficult, that for me, I can only speak for myself, that would take some time and saying it over and over and over, and that you have to put in a lot more work to make it believable, and it's a little bit more stressful and scary. But no, normally it's like normal. It's regular dialogue. It's a scenario, and you're in it.
Yeah,
But you
I
you're right.
was.
It's like, when you do sitcom work with the 4
Yeah,
cameras, like, if you land on your and you land this way instead of this way, you ruined the whole thing, and you gotta do it all over again. It's like, as much as this can, like, ruin the whole thing. So, you're focusing a lot on that, and the dialogue just kind of, like, comes out.
are you one of those people that will go back and look at stuff that you did in the past, or are you like, no, because I would have either done it different, or I'm just not interested in reliving anything in my past that I've done as far as a film or TV?
I would love yeah, I welcome seeing old stuff. I don't, I haven't thought to do that. Uh Some of it is hard for me, like Charles in Charge would be kind of
Of
triggering
course,
for me to
of
watch.
course.
But other things I do. Baywatch, I've been watching because, I'm producing on the documentary.
Yes.
So we've been watching a lot of that footage, and, I laugh. That makes me laugh because I didn't put a lot of effort. If I'm being completely honest, I didn't put a lot of effort into that. And it was hard to put any effort into the acting on that show. And, so it makes me cringe a little bit. That
Like,
show makes me cringe. But other things, I love it. It takes me back, and then I get, like, emotional, and then it's like I start thinking of mortality, and then I start crying, and then I'm depressed. No, it just takes you back, and I don't know, it's sort of neat. It's sort of like a yearbook because I don't have a lot of pictures, and I don't have a lot of memorabilia of growing up.
yeah, yeah.
So that's kind of where I get it.
So I do want to touch on what you're doing at the Baywatch now, but the reason I asked the question, do you go back and watch or take in any of that stuff, is that you're a mom and you're a proud mom and you're a great mom and you have two great daughters. Do you show your past work to your daughters? Will they watch it? Will they say, my mom did have a life before she was a mom?
Well, my oldest, she grew up on set with me all the time. So for her, it's just what mom does. And it's really no big deal. My youngest, she loves it. She gets super excited. Her PE teacher said, Eggert, is your mom Nicole Eggert? I'm like, yes, she is. She's
Love it.
super proud. She loves it. I'm not saying my other one isn't proud. She just has a different,
Yeah.
I mean, she grew up since she was a baby. She's been on set. So it's like,
Yeah. She's seen it 100 times. Yeah.
yeah, it's old to her. But my youngest, she looks back
Love it.
and sees me as a kid, and yeah, she thinks it's amazing.
I think that's cool too. I
Yeah.
think that's cool too. I mean, there aren't too many people who live their life and have it on, video. And I mean, it's pretty cool that part of your life is on video to whether it's to your kids or your grandkids, and who you were as a person at one time as, you go up and down in the roller coaster of life. I find it fascinating. You mentioned you have a project with Baywatch. I think you should share that because, obviously Baywatch is the most famous show of all time worldwide. It is, you kind of teased a little bit that you didn't need the best acting skills to be on it, but people were watching, and that's all it takes. Hey, you're watching, and you weren't watching something else while you were watching this, so that's fantastic. Can you talk about what you're doing at the Baywatch?
Well, it's been 3 years now. We've been on this for 3 years. We Matt Felker and I, he's a friend of mine. He's directing it and he executive produces it. Um, we were talking because I had taken Baywatch out to do a show later with a lot of the girls, a lot of the cast, and all the networks wanted to do a reality thing, and it never really like clicked. Nothing ever fit, and but I knew there was something there. I was like, we got to do something to pay tribute to the show. And Matt and I love documentaries, so we were always talking about documentaries, and we came up with this idea to do a documentary on Baywatch. And basically, where we kind of started was how Baywatch became so huge and such a trend-setting show before the internet.
Yeah.
There was no internet, there was no social media, and yet it reached all over the world like that. And also how it was a feel good, it was escapism for people because of what was going on in the world. We had the riots and the Berlin Wall was coming down, and we had a huge earthquake. I mean, there was so much that was going on that it was the perfect timing for that
Yeah.
show. And then, as fate would have it, as we start filming, we fall into this huge pandemic, which at first felt devastating for the documentary. And then, kind of just realized and put it into perspective that this is where it's supposed to be, because once again, shooting Baywatch, going through, tough times, people want escapism. People want stuff that makes them feel good, nostalgia, and all of that. So that's sort of where it started. And it's really evolved into a beautiful, beautiful project. Matt has really taken the time to get to know all the actors, which is, something that hasn't been done before. And we shoot all original footage, and it's just going to be very different from anything you've seen before. Not an expose, not a tell-all, not any of these like true stories that you've seen on TV. It's none of that. It's completely pulls back, the curtain on it, and lets you get to know who the people are, and who these actors are, and how their life has changed because of Baywatch. And everybody's in such a good place.
Okay.
Everybody's gone up and down, and it's just a really beautiful,
I
it's a
love it.
beautiful story. Yeah.
How hard was it to get people to participate? Was it tough, or were they excited about the project? Or I'm always curious to know where people are when the people they do something, they put it in the background, and then they said, I'm only looking forward, or are they saying, look, this was a major deal and it is worth my time to work with you and get this project out there?
A few people took some convincing. I'm not going to lie. A few people really took some convincing, but when they saw what we were shooting,
Yeah.
and, speaking to us and hearing like what the vision is and what the tone is, people came around. And I think they're glad they did. They're happy. It's now that they're seeing, because it's almost finished. Now that they're seeing, how great it looks and just how fun it is, everybody's really, really pleased. And that feels good, because we wanted everybody, to be happy. A lot of people, were gung-ho right from the beginning. A lot of people want to pretend like they were never on the show.
Yeah.
So it's a mixed bag.
It's a mixed bag. I think the fans of Baywatch, and again, the people who follow the careers of so many of the people that were on that show, I think they're going to love it. They're going to absolutely love it. And
They
when
are.
it comes out, it's going to be exciting. I'm sure you're going to do a great job, and you're going to be very proud of it. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
So a couple different things that we're going to do on this podcast is we want audience participation. And so we're
Yes.
going to encourage the audience to go to the website, and it's perfectlytwistedpod.com. And from there, you'll be able to see where you can ask questions. And we're going to
Yeah.
give one person a week, Nicole, a chance to basically ask you 5 straight questions. And you won't know what's coming, and you're going to get a chance to go through and answer off the top of your head. But I think it's going to be fun. And
It's
again,
going to be
audience
really fun.
participation is always fun. Kind of like what you just said at the very beginning of the show when you talked about acting in front of a live audience, and instantly you have that connection, the energy. And I think the audience will be a big part of what you're doing here on Perfectly Twisted.
Yeah, and it's amazing because people always say, "Oh, write a book, write a book." Well, I don't know, I don't know what to write about, and I've got this whole other, second half of my life to go here.
Of
I feel
course.
like what is there to write about? This isn't over. Don't say it's over. I got a whole, my kid's only 11. I'm still single. There's so much more, but there are things that people are curious about. So I'm interested to know what people are interested in, and it keeps it fun, and it keeps it, because I get bored of myself. I'm like,
Yeah.
what? It's just me. Like, I'm boring. But so you got to pull the stories out of me. You got to ask me and make me think about stuff. So yeah, send your questions in, because I think that's really fun. And to be put on the spot is funny too. You know,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So since the audience, since the first show, and I'm the one that gets a chance to, as a fan of yours, to ask questions, I want to fire some questions at you. Okay.
Okay.
So what are you watching right now? What are you into right now as a fan of TV?
Well, everything Bravo. I think that's a no-brainer. Everything Bravo. And I also have kind of recently, not too recently, but fallen into the TLC family. So there's these girls that I'm obsessed with, 1,000 Pound Sisters. Have you ever seen
Yes.
the show?
Yeah, I have.
I'm in love with these girls. I'm in love with this family. I'm in love with the whole
Yeah.
family. So I love that, and I love all the 90 Day stuff. But
Yeah.
Bravo, obviously, I just watched Jersey last night.
Yes. I gotta admit to your audience, and it's Nicole's show. Nicole and I both love reality TV.
Yeah,
We
Dave
do.
is
It's
a
one of the
total
things we,
sports guy. He's a
yeah.
sports guy until you say housewives.
Yes. And I'm the only one in the house that watches. I've watched every Kardashians. I've watched every Housewives. I watch them all. And I hate to say it, Nicole knows my son, and as Josh will say, because I have two moms, and I will sit there and watch. I'm the only guy, and he just rolls his eyes and walks out of the house. He has no time for me watching these, but I can't get enough. I'm not joking. Today, Nicole, I had on one TV, I had Miami on, and then I had New Jersey on another TV, and I'm just flipping back and forth. I'm watching two of them at the same time. I can't get enough of these reality shows.
They're
I love it.
crazy. They're
I love it.
insane. Where are you at on Miami?
Okay, so I'm behind. Okay, so Nicole was saying I thought I was all caught up. I didn't realize that
They've
I was
done the
missing
reunion.
Miami on Peacock. Yeah, I know. I'm getting there. I'm not sleeping. All I'm doing is catching up in Miami. But I'm on the most recent season, and I'm a few episodes behind. But I got to hurry up, knowing there's a reunion. But for me, I love it. I'm glad that you love it. I finally have someone to talk to about it, and so it's fantastic. And I'm watching. You said New Jersey's a train wreck, and Vanderpump's never been better. I'm watching all of them, so I'm dying to know what Nicole thinks on some of these shows. And so,
And all the
yeah,
Vanderpump. Oh my gosh! I mean, that's got the world like it has the whole world like on their toes right now.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, it's funny with Vanderpump because I started getting into that because I was really good friends with Randall Emmett for years.
wow,
Lala's
yeah,
ex-husband, baby daddy. And it was years and years and years ago. He was great to us. We would go take that jet everywhere. He'd take me and my daughter and all of our friends, and but I always kept it friend zone with Randall.
yeah.
And it's like to know Randall, you had to know like kind of who
What
he
he
is and
was,
what he's about. Like,
yeah.
God, I digress. But he was always very kind, and we went on a lot of amazing trips and had a great time. But one night he's texting me. It's like a Friday or a Saturday night, and he's texting me out of the blue. And the next day we have a birthday party at a trampoline park. And I take my daughter and go, and I'm like walking through this trampoline park, and I see Randall, and I'm like, whoa, weird. And he's like, oh, and then he's with kids and this woman, and he goes, Nicole, I want you to meet Lala. And I was
Oh,
like, oh, now I know who the secret guy is. I was like, I
yeah,
know who the married secret guy is.
yeah,
So, and that, I mean, this is, way,
yeah.
way back then when it was like she wouldn't say who he was. And so I got really like, oh, and of course I'm never going to say anything. But it really like piqued my interest. And I was like, oh gosh, I got to watch this. So and then it sucked me right in. And it's like,
Yes, me too.
stuck
Me
there.
too. Me too.
And you know what? Jax and Brittany are going to be on Watch What Happens Live tonight on
yes.
Bravo. And I'm super excited because we haven't seen or heard from them in forever. I'm dying.
Okay, so here's the deal: as I'm watching all these shows in the middle of the night, I'm sitting there and I'm googling at different things, and they have their own show coming out too. There's a project they're working on.
Oh, there
It's
is?
not, yeah, it's not supposed to be back on Vanderpump, but they're supposed to be having their own show. Like, so I'm curious. Trust me, I'll be watching that too. I mean, I am
They have a
so
child
stuck
now,
in the
right?
spider web.
They have
Yeah,
a
yeah,
child, right? Do they
they
only
do.
have one? They just have one child?
Right now, they have a son. Yeah, they do. They do. I'm
Well,
laughing because I'm thinking anyone else outside of you right now would just be shaking their head as I say, I know they have a 2-year-old son. Yes,
yes. Okay.
yes,
Oh, I love it. Oh, good. Because I always wonder, like, what are they doing? But
yeah,
now
yeah.
I
So
know.
you're gonna see that tonight. So
Neat.
the Vanderpump story is insane. I mean, as it's reality TV, but man, it is in the New York Times. It's everywhere. It's in the Post. It's
I
in the
know.
LA
It was
Times.
on CNN. I was like,
Yeah,
what is going
yeah,
on here? It's
yeah.
real. So now I don't feel as guilty as being so into it because
Me
everybody's
too.
into it.
Now I don't feel crazy. Now I'm not
Dirty,
embarrassed.
rotten scoundrels, these kids. God,
Oh my gosh.
unbelievable.
All right. So promise me week by week, at least at some point, we get a chance to break down some of these shows and where
Okay.
things are going, because I'm dying to know your opinion on what you see. I love the fact that you actually knew somebody that ended up being a big figure on one of the shows that we watch. So that is wild too. That
Yes.
is something else. But
Yes.
there are so many people that you and I have talked about off there, and you actually, a ton of people, whether they're athletes or they're actors, that I think there's some great stories that are going to come out over the next year. And so I'm extremely excited that you're doing this. And so, last question I'll ask you before we go is, why did Nicole Eggert decide to do a podcast?
Well, you know what? I have kind of fallen into this role of just being stay-at-home mom in a
Yeah.
way. Obviously, I still at work, and it's like a one-income household over here. But I really, I'm a cheer mom, and I give all this time, and I was like, I really am missing that creative outlet of just chatting and this, just doing this and talking and reminiscing and all of it. So it's a creative outlet for me. I'm not artistic. Like I don't paint. I can't sing for shit. I can't dance. There's no making TikTok videos over here. My daughter tries. She's like, this is an easy one. It's like 3 steps. And I'm like all over the place. Can't, she just rolls her eyes at me because she's fantastic at it. So, for me, it's a creative outlet. People are always asking me, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like write a book. Like I said, they always, and I'm like, write a book. It's like, I don't have I'm like too ADD to write a book. So yeah, I think it's fun. It's just, and I got into podcasts recently. You say the young kids, but I'm that way. I want my like entertainment on demand. I,
Yes.
I fall into that. So been falling in love with different podcasts, and it just like I love it. I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. So I thought give it a shot.
Yeah, I think again, I think it'd be great. That, and I haven't shared with a lot of people what your plan was when you were doing this. There are very small people in a small group, that I was extremely excited when you said you were going to commit to doing it, and said the name of the podcast, Perfectly Twisted, and I said Nicole came up with that name, and it was her name that she came up with it, because I think it describes human beings. Nobody has mastered life. Nobody has figured it out. We have crazy thoughts in our heads at times, and then there are times that you're going, you know what? Overall, I'm winning. I'm doing a good job, and you're definitely winning. And so I love the title that you came up with, and the colors, everything, that the everything is all Nicole. So we couldn't be more proud, of course, that you're doing this. It's exciting for me as a person that is a fan of yours, and just wants you to do great as a person. I think this is awesome for the viewers and the listeners to see where Nicole Eggert is today, because the pictures that we use on the website, and I show some of those people, like, boy, she is still beautiful, and I go, she's beautiful inside and out. I can't wait for the audience to realize who you are and how great you are.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. It's funny with the perfectly twisted, because it's like, well, what describes you? Who are you? And I'm like, who am I? It depends what day it is, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it depends
It's
what
life.
setting I'm in. I might have like my trucker mouth on, and then have to switch, to PTA mom,
Yeah.
like cheer mom, and so it's like I'm such a mixture. I'm such a mutt of different things. So yeah, it's perfectly twisted, and I've got a sick sense of humor. So let's
I love it. I love
let's
it. I did great. All right. So the first show is in the books. And again, we ask you to subscribe again to on all platforms. And again, you can check it out through YouTube. You can go through the host site, which is JP25 Media, and you can sit there and look at the shows that way as well. But I'll say this, Nicole, as someone who's done this now for about 6 years, the first one's always the toughest. And to me, you hit a home run on day one. So from here, it always gets easier. Again, we want audience interaction. So please go to the website, perfectlytwistedpod.com. Write your questions. Be a person in line to ask Nicole anything, and she will do her best to be honest, which I can tell you she will be all the way through. So, Nicole,
yeah,
thank you so
open book.
much. This is
Yeah,
awesome.
thank you.
I'm
Thanks
proud
for
of you.
joining me on this journey.
Thanks for having me. I did not think this was going to happen, but for me, I'm on cloud nine. And wait till the people in high school see that I made it. That all of a sudden I did have that conversation with
We're
Nicole. So
buddies. We're
we're
homies now.
buddies.
Yeah,
We are.
they can talk all their shit they want,
You're,
right?
I hate to say it, Nicole. You're
Yeah.
family now. You're family for life now. You're locked in. You're locked in. Nicole, thank you so much. We'll see you next week.
Thanks. Yeah. Bye, guys. See ya.